Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. So, I want you to imagine just for a second holding the reins of the entire known world. Picture a civilization so absolutely dominant, so vast, that its armies were universally feared, its roads effortlessly connected continents, and its culture literally rewrote human history. The Roman Empire was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the ancient world. They controlled this massive territory spanning Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. And yet, despite all of that unimaginable power and immense wealth, it vanished. It completely collapsed. So, how does something that massive just disappear? Right, let's dive straight into this. How could an empire that lasted for centuries, one that was basically synonymous with invincibility, suddenly just fall apart? When we think of Rome, we tend to picture this eternal, unshakable bedrock of civilization. But as we know, empires don't just trip and fall overnight. To really get to the bottom of the eternal city's demise, we need to do a bit of a historical autopsy. We're going to examine the fatal structural failures that brought down an absolute titan. Let's kick things off with Section 1, Rome at its peak. To really grasp the magnitude of this collapse, we have to look at the sheer, awe-inspiring scale of what they achieved. We're talking about a continuous, unified territory stretching all the way from the rainy shores of Britain down to the arid deserts of the Middle East. And they were absolute masters of engineering. They built massive roads, towering aqueducts, these breathtaking temples, and sprawling cities. Because of all this incredible infrastructure, trade absolutely flourished, funneling immense wealth right into the heart of the empire. And guarding all of this, the Roman army, arguably one of the most disciplined and devastatingly effective military forces the world has ever seen. To anyone living under its banner, it seemed like an absolute certainty that Rome would just last forever. But beneath that glittering surface, some really serious systemic problems were quietly taking root. Which brings us to Section 2, Wound 1. Political chaos and instability. 20. That is the magic number. Between the years 235 and 284 AD, a brutal stretch historians call the crisis of the 3rd century, Rome burned through more than 20 different emperors. Just think about that for a second. That's a worse turnover rate than a struggling sports franchise. The most powerful position on the entire planet had suddenly become a revolving door. And, they weren't exactly retiring peacefully to the countryside. Emperors were coming and going at an alarming rate because they were constantly being assassinated, violently overthrown, or killed off in bitter civil wars. Instead of looking outward and defending the empire's massive borders, Roman leaders were completely obsessed with fighting each other for the throne. This constant deadly struggle at the very top gutted the government. It created this devastating baseline of uncertainty that just rippled out through the entire empire. Moving right along to Section 3, Wound 2. The economic crisis. Because, look, empires don't just bleed out from political backstabbing, they bleed economically too. Maintaining a continent-spanning empire is unbelievably expensive. You've got to pay the military, fund those massive public projects. So the government desperately needs cash, and they hike up taxes. Everyday citizens start struggling immensely under this crushing weight. But even that isn't enough to pay the bills. So the government starts doing something really risky. They start messing with the money itself. They begin minting coins with less and less actual precious metal inside them, just trying to physically print more money. The inevitable result? Severe inflation spikes. Confidence in Roman currency just plummets, trade takes a massive hit, and the whole economy weakens. Suddenly, it becomes terrifyingly difficult for Rome to actually fund those armies and protect its own borders. And that leads us to Section 4, Wound 3, Military Decline and Invasions. This economic starvation perfectly sets the stage for the breaking of Rome's greatest shield. In the early days, the military was this highly disciplined machine made up of fiercely loyal Roman citizens. But as the empire rotted politically and economically, convincing those citizens to sign up got really, really hard. So, to fill out the ranks, the late Roman Empire had to lean heavily on foreign mercenaries. Now, a lot of these guys fought bravely, but the core issue was loyalty. Their allegiance was fundamentally uncertain. You went from an army fighting for their homeland to an army fighting for a paycheck. A paycheck that, remember, was practically worthless thanks to all that inflation we just talked about. And right when Rome's internal defenses were at their absolute weakest, external threats began to multiply. Powerful tribes gathered just beyond the borders, sensing the vulnerability. Groups like the Visigoths, the Vandals, and the Huns began aggressively invading. And this all culminated in a moment that literally sent shockwaves through the ancient world. In 410 AD, the Visigoths actually breached the walls and sacked the city of Rome itself. No way, right? For the very first time in centuries, the invincible eternal city had fallen to an enemy. It was a massive psychological and physical blow that the empire would never fully recover from. All right, Section 5, the final fall. So, let's trace how these dominoes cascaded. We start in the 2nd century AD. Everything looks fantastic. Rome is at its absolute peak. Then, boom, we hit the crisis of the 3rd century, where political chaos reigns and 20 emperors cycle through in a flash. That internal weakness invites invasion, leading to the shocking sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410 AD. By the time we hit the late 5th century, the Western Roman Empire is just barely clinging to life. The economy is in ruins, the government is barely functioning, the military is a shadow of what it used to be, and finally, we arrive at 476 AD. A Germanic leader named Odoacer steps in and just casually removes the young Roman emperor Romulus Augustulus from power. So, the crucial takeaway here is that 476 AD wasn't some sudden, dramatic defeat on a battlefield. While it's considered the official end of the Western Roman Empire, the removal of that final emperor was really just the quiet, inevitable finishing blow to a structure that had been rotting from the inside for centuries. After nearly 500 years of global dominance, Rome had fallen. Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, an enduring legacy. But here is where the story gets really fascinating. The physical empire died, sure, but its ghost absolutely survived. Its influence never truly disappeared. I mean, we're literally surrounded by the echoes of Rome today. Roman law is the very foundation for so many modern legal systems. Their architecture still inspires our government buildings and monuments. Their language birthed Italian, French, Spanish, and had a huge impact on English. Their incredible engineering and massive cultural footprints are still shaping our world. So yeah, the Roman Empire may have officially fallen, but its legacy is still going strong more than 1,500 years later. Which leaves us with this final kind of provocative thought. We've just looked at exactly how political chaos, severe inflation, and a fading sense of civic duty brought down the ultimate superpower of the ancient world. If the supposedly invincible eternal city could rot so thoroughly from the inside out, well, are those exact same vulnerabilities visible in our modern societies today? It's definitely something to chew on. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning.